Hi folks, we're just giving a few moments here at the top for Zoom to let everybody in before we get started with tonight's event. If you are already in tonight's webinar with us, you can open up your chat window and find some information about how to purchase books by tonight's featured authors. Good evening and welcome to tonight's live online author event with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Chelsea from Greenlight, and we're thrilled to host tonight's event with Alaa Al Aswany presenting his new book, The Republic of False Truths. We'll be talking with Christopher Bollen, so you're in for an excellent time. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Alaa, Christopher, and the team at Knopf for making this happen, and to all of you for showing up. Though we're not able to host events in our store spaces, our community of authors and readers is still here. We're grateful for your support and for the chance to make space for conversation and connection. Now we have just a few housekeeping things. In our Zoom webinar tonight, you can see and hear the speakers. They cannot see or hear you. They can see that you're here though, and you can see a count of, there are a few different ways that you can interact with the authors and with each other throughout tonight's event, which we highly encourage. The first is the chat, which you can find by clicking on the icon that looks like one speech balloon. You're welcome to post your comments and thoughts in the chat. That's a great way to show your appreciation for the author and interact with fellow attendees. If you have a specific question you'd like to have answered by the author, please post that question in the Q&A module. You can find it by clicking on the icon that looks like two speech balloons. We'll be pulling questions only from the Q&A to be answered in the later part of the program. And importantly, tonight's featured book, The Republic of False Truths, is available for sale from Greenlight Bookstore. You can shop in person in our bookstore locations, noon to 7 p.m. every day of the week, and you can purchase Alaa's book and many others on site. Or order online at greenlightbookstore.com for a quick pickup at the store or for shipping anywhere in the US. I'll drop that buy link in the chat. If you care about supporting the careers of authors and the ongoing existence of independent bookstores, buying tonight's featured book is a great way to show your support. Our interviewer tonight is Christopher Bollen. He is the writer of 4 novels, most recently the Venice-based literary thriller A Beautiful Crime. His next novel, a political thriller partly set in Cairo, will be out by Harper in 2023. His journalism has appeared in a number of publications. He is currently the editor-at-large of Interview magazine and a contributing editor at Vanity Fair. He lives in New York. He'll be speaking with our featured author, Alaa Al Aswany. He is the author of numerous works of fiction and nonfiction, including the novels The Yacoubian Building, the best-selling novel in the Arab world for more than 5 years, with more than 1 million copies sold around the world. Chicago, named by Newsday as the best translated novel of 2006, and most recently, The Automobile Club of Egypt. His work has been translated into more than 30 languages and published in more than 100 countries. He has received several international awards, including the Vincent Cabot Prize, and in 2016, he was appointed a Chevalier of the Order des Arts and Letters of France. His new book, The Republic of False Truths, published in the US in the 10th anniversary year of the demonstrations that swept through Egypt in 2011, has been banned in Egypt for insulting the president, the armed forces, and judicial institutions for its depictions. Through the lives of a vivid, colliding cast of characters, Aswany explores what the revolution meant to those who lived through it, and takes readers inside the battle raging between those in power and those prepared to lay down their lives in defense of freedom. Christopher is going to start us off with a reading from Alaa's book, and then Alaa will be talking with Christopher and with all of you. Christopher, please take it away.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here and to talk to Alaa, who's such an amazing writer. And I just have to share a little anecdote just to show maybe American readers how important the Yacoubian Building, that novel, is to Egyptians, is that I was in Cairo in April, minding my own business. It wasn't very touristy, of course, because of COVID. And I was minding my own business, walking through the downtown district. And a man came out of a perfume shop to try to point me in the direction of the Yacoubian Building. He thought it was so important that I find out and see where it was. I didn't ask. He must have known that I was a fan, but he was so proud of it. And then, of course, he tried to lure me into his shop and show me a letter he'd gotten from Nancy Reagan, which reminded me of an episode in Yacoubian Building where they can sort of fake New York Times articles. And so it was a very Yacoubian experience, but Alaa means so much to the Egyptian people and to readers around the world. And it's such an honor to talk about his new book.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to read a very, very short section of the novel. Just a little part that stuck out to me is very representative, but also very interesting about what Tahrir Square was like as an outsider who, of course, didn't participate in the revolution, was watching it from a distance, and didn't realize sort of the structure of it. And I think that this passage really tells us a lot about what it was like on the ground in the early days. I'll give it my best go. Everything in the square was organized. Committees of young men and women were scattered at the entry points to provide security for the square, and they searched those coming in of either sex and checked their IDs. Provisioning committees were in charge of providing food, which didn't stop hundreds of volunteers from bringing more with them. A volunteer would come in with hundreds of sandwiches and put them on the ground, invite those nearby to eat, and then disappear into the crowd. Media committees were in charge of contact with the press and with welcoming foreign journalists, and every now and then, calls would be repeated over the loudspeakers asking for a doctor somewhere or a volunteer to man one of the entrances. Tahrir Square had been transformed into a small, independent republic, the first parcel of Egyptian land to be liberated from the dictator's rule. Each of those who had taken up residence in Tahrir felt that he was realizing some kind of ideal. Each felt that the success of the revolution depended specifically on what he or she did. The main stage, where speakers made their speeches into a microphone provided with large loudspeakers whose echoes reached every part of the square, had been erected by their own efforts. On either side of it, organizers had sat the mothers of the martyrs, pitiable middle-aged ladies in black over whom a mournful silence hung. Each had placed on her breast a large photograph of her martyred son and would gaze at those around them almost pleadingly, as though they might be able to bring their children back. Before anyone spoke into the microphone, the organizers would ask them to shake hands with the martyrs' mothers, a gesture perhaps intended to make the speaker understand that the revolution would never abandon the rights of those who had given their lives for it. The Mubarak regime sent groups of public figures, one after another, to the square to convince the revolutionaries to end their sit-in and go home. The occupiers refused to listen to them and chased them away, despite which they didn't stop coming even for one day. At the corners of the square, day and night, there were speech makers talking to groups of people. Once, Ashraf said to Ikram, "You know, the square reminds me of Hyde Park," meaning the square in London. Anyway, that was so moving to me as a passage of what that moment and that space was like. And I know, Alaa, that you actually were down there during that time. My first question for you is, whilst in the midst of this revolution and revolutionary moment, did you foresee this as fodder to a novel, or did the idea of writing a novel about this time come much later?
No, as a novelist, you are, as a matter of fact, a novelist is two persons. Is not one single person. There is the person you're talking to now, and there is another person with a very sensitive and efficient camera, and he is taking photos, registering every detail, and this happens all the time. I don't decide to do that, Of course, for example, when I first came to America 30 years ago to study at the University of Illinois, Chicago, I had in mind that one day I'll probably write a novel about this experience. And I did. And of course, when I left the revolution, I had in mind this. But I just wanted to say that it's not something you decide about. It's your nature as a novelist.
Yeah, were you? I mean, obviously you were busy at the Square at that time, but were you also taking notes, or were you just sort of remembering it all?
I never take notes because my mind is doing, to me, a wonderful job because it's absolutely selective. So your memory will keep what is significant, and your memory or your mind will lose all the details that are irrelevant. You see. So I don't take notes, but I remember what I should remember. Accordingly, of course I had in mind that one day I will write about the revolution, and especially about the revolution. It has become a kind of duty. You see, I already signed for another novel with my publishers, and I have many publishers. I have 42 publishers all over the world. Yes, 37 languages. So I signed another novel, but at some point I felt that no, I feel like writing this novel. And they were very cooperative. They understood and they changed the contract. But the point is that, of course, you have in mind that one day you will write about that. And again, I felt it's my duty to do that.
Right. I know you're so prolific, and you write nonfiction and about politics as well, and you've written about the revolution. And I wonder, I know that this is sort of a question you must get all the time, and I think all novelists do who write about a certain place. What does a novel do about that spring uprising and that year that a nonfiction piece can't touch? What does it get to? What can fiction get to of a real political situation that an essay couldn't?
Well, I defined fiction as a life on the papers that is similar to our daily life, but more profound, more significant, and more beautiful. So what is important in any novel is not the now element. Any fiction, you have the now element, the political situation, the social situation, at the time of the writing, and you have the human element. What is important in any novel is the human element. The now element will disappear. You read, for example, the Spanish Civil War described by Hemingway, but there is no civil war, right? There is no more civil war, but because he's a great writer, you have the human component very strong, right? With Dostoevsky, the same, Balzac, all. The now element is no more relevant, but the human element will always live with us.
Right.
Accordingly, I try in my novels to use the now situation in order to present a human element, which is much more important.
I think one of the, I was thinking about while reading this book, I was also thinking that I don't believe that there's been a 9/11 novel, for example, that's succeeded as a testament to that time. I just don't think that it has been written yet as a novel, and it interests me because I don't think that if you weren't here to do it, I don't think that there would be someone else who could write this revolution of 2011 Egyptian novel. And I think maybe the skill is your ability to use such a diverse cross-section of characters. Was that important to you for framing the story to kind of get such a large sweep?
Of course, the characters, when I write a novel, it takes me like 3 or 4 years, sometimes 5 years. Why? Because I have to feel the novel first. You feel the novel. You don't decide the novel. I do not decide. I feel it. You see, the novel to me is a love story. You don't decide to fall in love with this person, but you just fall in love with this person. So I have many projects, and I must fall in love with the idea, with this novel, and not the others. And then, first step. Second step is to make a novel research. That's very important, you see.
Right.
Because if I write about New York, if I write about an American writer in New York, probably use my experience with some friends. If I write about somebody who's Republican, I will find a Republican friend to talk to him or to her. You must make research, and it takes time, and it's very, very serious job. Number 3, the characters. You should create the characters, and you should believe the characters. The characters should be vivid and convincing to you in the first place, and then accordingly to the readers. If you have those 3 steps done, then you go to the writing. The writing is the last step. And
you have this,
Go ahead. No, well, I mean, that's how I write. That's how I write.
But you must have, because what's so amazing about your writing is that you do have such a huge cast. It could be like a Robert Altman cast or a Fellini cast of characters running amok in these novels. And it's like, all these different lives are being juggled. And I wonder, do you feel like, do you kind of like write about one and fall in love with them and follow them a little bit and then think, oh, I haven't talked about that one in a while? Or is this all sort of strategically planned from the beginning of how you're going to braid it all together?
No, it's a real creation. You create a character in your mind first, and you put on details, more details, and then at some point you see the character. You must see the character, and then you believe that the character exists.
Mm-hmm.
The character will always be, of course, invisible, but you will feel it. You will feel that they are around you, and then you begin the writing. Maximum after 1/3 of the novel, I lose control of my characters. They become independent. I don't invent anymore. In the morning, I wake up and I open my laptop and I see them doing things. I just write what I see on the screen of my imagination. For example, because I know that the idea could be weird. In the Yacoubian Building, there was an old man who fell in love with a young lady, and they got arrested by the police, humiliated. By the end of the chapter, he said, we must forget what happened. And then she answered, I have been always an unlucky person. And I write very early in the morning. So I felt very bad for her. And I kept thinking of her the whole day. And then the next day, I write from 7 to 1 p.m. Every day. So 7 a.m. the next day, I opened the laptop and I found that they got married overnight, right?
That's
And
right.
I was very happy. And I got out of my desk. It was like 7:15, and my wife was in the kitchen making coffee for me. And she said, "What?" Because I looked very happy. What happened? And I told her they got married.
I
And
had not, yeah, that's, I mean, it's a happy ending for them, really, which
yeah,
was a surprise after
yes,
that terrible
but that's the way
scene.
exactly. People sometimes don't realize this and ask you questions like, "Why did you kill the character in the end?" Or no, "What did you?" I never do. Of course, I never do that. The characters become independent. Sometimes
Right.
they do things, beautiful things, and sometimes they do terrible things, but I cannot stop them.
Do you find though, just in this book, there's such a diverse cast, and while it's such a serious subject, obviously this revolution, and there's so many tragedies within it too, there's also moments of high comedy or satire. I mean, there really are some amazing little moments, like the general has to, watch porn while having sex with his wife. I mean, there's some silly moments in there too, mixed in. And how do you know, because it's not just one tone, you're sort of balancing all these different tones. How do you know, like, when you're sort of adding just enough touch of humor, but you're not making it too humorous, and kind of
I don't decide about that. And of course, in our life, uh, comedy is very, very close. Anything could be a comedy at some point, and especially with the hypocrites and like this general. And I saw, of course, it's the formula is fiction equal reality plus imagination. So I'm always inspired by real people. And I saw generals like that.
yeah.
Spoke to them. And I saw them taking porno videos and CDs. And they think it's okay, because, they didn't do anything against the religion. So I saw that. I'm always inspired by real people.
Yeah, there was, I mean, going back to the Yacoubian Building for a second, there was a lot. I reread it for tonight, and there's all the seeds of the revolution stored in that book, and all of the hypocrisy, and the class system is so rigid. And yet, what I think separates this new novel is that it, and there's so many moments in the novel that talk about this, is that it really sort of gives the young, or the youth of Egypt, a chance to sort of tell their story, and the hope sort of rests. I think at one point, Ashraf, the character, says, these young people are able to do what we haven't done as a generation, and we should respect them. And I wondered, was that kind of a motivating factor, is to sort of put the spotlight on the youth of Egypt?
Yeah, that was a miracle. First, we must keep in mind that 65% of Egyptians are under the age of 35. So the majority of Egyptians are young people.
Yeah.
And that's should give us hope. And this is the real problem of the dictatorship, because there are too many young people. Most of them are revolutionary, even if they don't act anymore, because of the oppression, but they have the revolution in the heart and in the mind. And you cannot get rid of them because they are the majority. And the dictator doesn't understand really what happened. And you can find this in the novel, in the meeting when the general was talking to the figures, saying that this is not the Egyptian people, this is our people, don't do that. This
Right.
is a bad generation, absolutely corrupt, he said about the young people, polluted by the social media and the Western influence, you see?
Right.
So the dictator cannot understand really what happened. Accordingly, of course, it's a youth revolution. Even if some people like myself, I'm no more a young man, but I participated, but of course, it is their revolution.
Do you find within that feeling of such a large youth population in Egypt, do you think that offers hope that things will change? Or is Egypt just, I mean, because the novel itself has a lot of pessimism to it as well. And I wonder, do you feel, I mean, and a lot of the youth are sort of brokenhearted by the end, by what happened. And I wonder, do you feel a positivity, or does it feel some sort of awful cycle?
No, I must here say something I'm quite sure you know, but I must say it. The opinions of my characters are not necessarily my opinions.
Right.
So, as I told you, the character becomes independent. So sometimes they say things I agree with, and many times they say terrible things I disagree with. But my job is to make them talk, for themselves, right?
Yeah.
So you will find some terrible opinions about the Egyptian people in this novel. It's not my opinion at all. This is the opinion of the characters, some characters, and it is justified. You see, we can understand, we don't defend, but I can understand why they think this way. But personally, I believe that yes, I'm very optimistic. Why? Because first, the revolution is not a political change. The revolution is a cultural change in the first place that leads to a political change. Egyptian people who live now in Egypt are no more the Egyptians they used to live before the revolution. Something happened, something and it is irreversible. You see, and this is something again the dictator doesn't understand. You will never, nobody will ever be able to push the Egyptian people back to where they used to be. And in every sense, in the relation with the religion, in the relation with the authorities, in everything. Accordingly, I'm very optimistic, number one. Number two, if we read the history of the revolutions, it takes time. Why? Because what are your weapons as a revolutionary? It's all something, it's your moral. You are strong because you are courageous, you are intelligent, you have vision. But on the other side, the counter-revolution has everything. They have the money, as I described in the novel. They have the army, they have the police, they have the media, they have everything. So
Right.
it takes time. It takes time. 10 years after the French Revolution, the situation in France was catastrophic. And then the counter-revolution the royal family got back to power, but the revolution never ended. And the future is on our side. The future is on the side of the revolution. That's why I'm optimistic.
Yeah. It's so brilliant in your book how you show, basically, you don't talk about it, you really show the way the elite and the power elite manipulates the situation, even after Mubarak steps down, to sort of quell and control and spread disinformation through the population, and in so many different ways, telling that the people are paid by the CIA, and the media shows are controlling the narratives. And I think obviously, I think for most readers, some of the most brutal passages is the description of torture that some of the characters undergo. And I wondered how, as a novelist with an imagination the kind of imagination you have, you're able to set those scenes with such respect, but also tell the truth and show how horrific they are. I mean, were those difficult to write, those scenes, or
absolutely, because I relied on real testimonies, and I wrote this part when I was teaching creative writing at Bard College, and I used to teach twice a week, so I had time to finish the novel. And I had to hear and to read people, especially ladies, testifying about how they were tortured in a terrible way. And I had to write this, and it was very difficult for me, not in the writing, but in the feelings, And some of them I know, many of them I know in person. And many of those ladies, I knew them before the revolution, and I know what kind of people they were, very, very good people. And I saw them after the torture. And this virginity test, I mean, this happened. I just changed the names of the victims. Why? Because they live in Egypt, and I want to protect them, right?
Right.
But I have the real names. And despite the war against me in the Egyptian media because of this novel, despite the fact that the novel was published in Lebanon and not in Egypt, there was a war against me, and they made a case against me because of this novel before a military court. Because of the novel. But they never said that these testimonies were wrong or were fabricated, because they know it was true, you see.
So may I ask you, obviously this book is banned in Egypt, and did you anticipate that happening when you wrote it?
Or
did you?
Of course,
you did.
Of course. I had problems in Egypt since, as soon as Mr. Sisi came to power, I was banned from writing in all the Egyptian newspapers, banned from any TV appearance, banned my weekly culture seminar I used to organize for 20 years. It was banned. And there was a war, a kind of character assassination in the media against myself. But I never thought of leaving the country. But when I wrote this novel, I write, as I told you, very early in the morning. So I wrote, and I was writing the chapter of General Elwani, the first one. And then I finished the chapter and I was happy. And then I had lunch with my wife, and she said, how is the writing? And I said, great, but I think we will leave the country. So I know it. Yeah.
Your poor wife.
Yes. I know it. And she said, okay,
Ah, do you? I mean, you must miss Cairo and Egypt immensely. Does it feel hard to be, so removed for so long from your homeland?
Yeah, of course, but you know, you miss Egypt, you like, and you miss the Egypt you defend, and you miss the Egypt you dream of. But I don't miss Egypt under the dictatorship. You know, I don't like it. You know, so you cannot imagine your country without the circumstances. So this is a problem. Of course I miss my country. Of course I love my country. Of course I would love to get back. But get back where?
Right.
Get back to your country and your friends and your house, of course. But get back to the dictatorship. I don't miss the dictatorship.
This might be a broad question, but I'm very curious about it. Do you believe that there is such a thing as a national character? Americans often, when we're overseas, have a national character, which is, rather insulting. But I wonder, do you find that there is something very Egyptian about Egyptians, whether they're in Egypt or here in the United States? Are there qualities or ways of talking and a sense of humor that you find specific to Egypt?
Yeah, of course, but I don't think this is the core of the character. I believe that there are differences, of course, because people are different. And when you are American, you act differently than a French person, for example, or an Egyptian person. But the core is the same. The human core is the same. We have, and this is very much related to my concept of literature, and it's very
Mhm.
much related to the art. People are the same. Basically, they fall in love. They have the same feelings. They love their kids the same way. They have their ambitions. They struggle to earn a living the same way. Everything, but of course there are differences from not only from one country to another, from one city to another. You see, the people, even not only in Egypt, the people in Marseille are different than the people in Paris, for example. They are all
Right.
French people, but they are different. And you find those differences, difference in the big city and towns in America. People are different. But different in
Absolutely.
what? I don't think those differences are decisive. We are all human beings, you know, and this is a very important message, and I would say mission of literature, to show us that we could be different in color, in religion, in background, in education, in everything, but we are basically the same human being.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about your upbringing. I know that your father was a writer, and while he gave you those wise words to become a dentist, and you are a dentist, I wondered, growing up, even with an artist as a father, did you find it uh, a supportive environment to be a writer? I mean, was that considered a sort of far out career choice as a young man to want to pursue, or was there a lot of support for writers
No,
in
I have been
Egypt?
lucky. I have been lucky to be a dentist because for many reasons. First, I have been independent. I was never paid by the Egyptian government. No one single dollar, no one single Egyptian pound. Why? Because I don't need the money. Usually, the dictatorship is trying to buy the writers. So if you're
Mm,
a writer, they will pay you money without doing anything. You will get your paycheck every week without doing anything, just not to criticize the president. This never happened to me. First. Second, it's a way, it has been a wonderful tool to understand the people, because I have people from very different backgrounds every day. And of course, you can ask me, how could you understand the people if while their mouth, how could you understand anybody while his mouth is open, right? And of course, I tell you, I'm a kind of different dentist, because my patients become my friends. Many times they come and they say, we don't feel like doing any dental work. That's fine. I order coffee and we talk, and they invite me. And so my clinic is a dental clinic and a place for human communication, you see. So it has been very useful to me. In this novel, there is a cement factory.
Yes.
I used to work in a cement factory as a dentist for 6 years, and I was miserably underpaid. But I insisted to go twice a week to discover, because I said it's going to be useful one day, and that's what happened.
I'm curious what before we get to audience questions, I was curious what books, what novels when you were a child or a young man or coming into your own in your 20s and 30s, what novels were sort of precious to you? What were the novels that inspired you the most?
Well, this is a very I will try to it's a kind of very difficult question. I read fiction. I read in 4 languages. You see, I read English, French, Spanish, and Arabic. And I have many Greek writers, and I was raised in a French school, so I had the French writers first, right? And after that, of course, a writer like Hemingway, this is a master of fiction. For example, Henry Miller, a master of fiction. Lawrence Darrell. But I believe that in fiction, there are Fyodor Dostoevsky and there are the others.
Okay. Right.
I believe Dostoevsky is much more than a Greek novelist. He is, and they called him the prophet in Russia, because the difference between a novelist and the prophet, that the prophet has visions and he's not able to explain them. We are able to explain what we wrote, as I have been doing now for 40 minutes, right? But Dostoevsky was not able.
Well, Dostoevsky didn't have Zoom, so he was unable to.
Yes, he was not
unable to join us tonight, unfortunately, because of a satellite problem. But so even as a kid, you were. I mean, were you? When did you sort of discover the Russians? Was that something that was always in your household because of your?
No,
your
upbringing? my father banned me literally from reading Dostoevsky before the age of 19, before the university. And I said, why? And he said, listen, this is a Greek writer, the greatest. And you are just a kid, and you will have a kind of confused impression about him. And then, of course, because he banned me, I tried to read him, right? And then I was caught. For some reason. You're always caught easily, unfortunately. So I was caught because my father came early, right? And I was reading Dostoevsky. And he said, you're just an idiot. And I'm telling you this because for the good, for your good. And of course I got embarrassed. And I read Dostoevsky as my father told me when I was 19 years old, and I read everything. And I spent nights uploading, you know, and talking to myself. And by that time, I was living my grandmother, and my grandmother thought that I had trouble because I was talking to myself, you know, during the night and uploading. And then one day she cried. She said, "If you have trouble, you should go to the psychiatrist." And I said, "No, it's not a trouble. It is a great writer, a writer." And then that's what happened.
Well, your father's right, because sometimes you can come too soon or too late to a text, you know? It's all, a lot of it is the timing, you know?
My
that's so
father,
true.
my father passed away when I was 19, but before he told me, listen, because he read my first text when I was 13 years old. And he said, listen, you're talented. You are, he said that, you are very talented. But this is not everything. It's just the beginning. So what you should do is that every day in the morning, you ask yourself, what is the most important thing in your life? If the answer, anything but literature, stop writing, because you will never be able to do it. It should be literature, much more important than anything. And I'm doing this every day. And I have the
That's
same
so
answer.
true.
I have the same answer for 40 years.
One final question for me is what you wrote this book in Arabic. So do you always write in Arabic? You speak 4 languages or read in 4 languages. Is Arabic always the language you write in?
Well, there is something mysterious here. I can write articles in French and English without problems. In Spanish, I must use the dictionary, but I can write in Spanish. But with fiction, I feel more comfortable while I'm writing in Arabic. And I don't know why. I believe that under the visible text, there is another text. We don't see it. And I believe you could get to this text easier in your native language. I think that that's my explanation. But I only write fiction in Arabic. I can write articles easily without no problems in other languages.
Do you think that your next novel or whatever it'll be, do you think it'll be set in Egypt, or now that you're based in New York, do you think that you'll be turning your attention to New York again, or the United States? You've written about the United States before, but
I wrote a novel about Chicago, and it's called Chicago, and I was inspired by my experience in Chicago, and of course New York is a very rich experience. But I'm working now on a novel about a very important moment in the Egyptian history in Alexandria. It happens in Alexandria during the 60s. We had hundreds of thousands or millions even of Egyptians of European origin, because Egypt, and especially Alexandria, used to be very cosmopolitan society. So you had everybody. You had the Italians, the Greek, for generations. With
like those beautiful Kavafi poems.
Yes, with the military dictatorship, those people realize in no time, in few months, that they are no more treated as Egyptians. And because the dictatorship and the military dictatorship is doing the same thing now, is promoting xenophobia. Every European or Western is a potential spy. He could be against or something like that. So there was a real drama, and I was really inspired by this. So that's the novel I'm working on now.
Amazing. That sounds so interesting. Okay, we have one question from the audience, and I will read it to you. This is from Essam. Thank you for for asking the question. Can you speak to what psychological impact or even any type of trauma, if any, that remains with both Alaa the Egyptian citizen and Alaa the writer? I guess Essam's asking about lingering trauma or psychological impact.
Yeah, of course. It depends on, thank you very much for the question. It depends on how you see. If you understand, you will overcome all the trauma and all the drama. If you understand, and you should understand that, for example, I'm here, I'm no more in my country. Of course, it's a good thing to be in New York. I'm secure here. I'm safe. I write. I publish my books and everything. But still, the feeling that you're not allowed to go back home is not really pleasant one, right? But it depends on the way you see things. If you see that this is a price you must pay for the cause of freedom, and then you will be okay. If you think that this is a price for you to keep your self-respect, you will be happy. And if you think about other comrades, thousands of comrades who paid much higher price, like they were killed or they're in prison or they were tortured, then you will feel good. So it depends on the way you see the struggle, the way you see the situation. And I believe I'm fine. I am the most important thing that I have been able to keep my self-respect. And here I would like to tell you a wonderful quote by Che Guevara. He said, honor is to say always what you think and to do always what you say. And I try to do that.
Well, I think you do. Thank you so much. I think that sums it up. Thank you so much for
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, my dear Christopher. It was thank you very much. It was wonderful, and thank you for this. The way you moderated the event was really wonderful, and the questions were very interesting. And thank you very much, and thank you, and thanks to all the people who made it possible tonight, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alaa and Christopher, for such a fantastic conversation. And thank all of you who joined us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
A reminder that you can buy The Republic of False Truths from Greenlight. I'm putting that buy link in the chat again. You can shop online there at greenlightbookstore.com for shipping anywhere in the US or for local in-store pickup if you're in Brooklyn with us, or if you'd like to stop by the stores, we are open at noon to 7 p.m. every day of the week for limited capacity browsing. Thank you so much again, Alaa and Christopher. And
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Oh, you too. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.